Can everyone
Hi,
hear
Phil.
and see me? Hello, how
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Very happy to have you with us. You know the gig. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We've got my head of product, Nick, on the line as well, and he might be the last slide in French, so we just want to make sure that he's got permissions, if that's okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to talk about our solution that we're building to manage concrete much better. We can go through the slides quite quickly. So what our solution is aiming to do, we have a global problem where we're losing £40 billion through concrete waste and mismanagement. Next slide. We can aim to cut 50 megatons of CO2 from the atmosphere, from the waste, from the emissions associated with this concrete waste. And next slide. And we can reduce 500 megatons of concrete waste a year. So this is the carbon cost, the waste cost, and the financial cost that waste concrete is causing every year in industry. And next slide. And I'll just talk through the problem a little bit here. So basically the problem is with ready-mix concrete, when the concrete goes into the back of the truck, it's a highly technical material. And a lot of the time, about 2% of the time, it arrives to site and basically it's out of specification. Now, in those scenarios, the construction company can reject that concrete, and then that concrete is then wasted. So this is one half of the problem, the real monitoring of the quality in the truck. And the other half of the problem is when engineers are ordering concrete on site, they will generally over-order between 5 and 10 to make sure they have 10% to make sure they have enough concrete so they don't have a cold gap, basically. And next slide. And all this leads to around 5% of all projects concrete going to waste. I can't see my screen because there's someone admitting in there. And and we're piloting with HS2 in the UK, which is Europe's largest infrastructure project, and we're aiming to save them about £25 million, which is 5% of their concrete in phase 1 alone. And the next slide, please. This amounts to 50 million kilograms of CO2, or the equivalent of taking 11,000 cars off the road. And next slide. And I'll dig into the solution a little bit here. So if we move on to the next slide, solution 1 is really monitoring and understanding the concrete in the back of the truck. So we use sensors in the back of the truck, and we send the data to our cloud box, which is sent to our back end. We then use machine learning to understand the concrete in the drum, and we deploy that machine learning through all of the historical records of each batch type through our drum. So what we do is we can predict the quality of concrete upon arrival, and we can intervene if there's going to be an issue, to making sure that the concrete arrives right first time, every time. And the next slide, please. Not only are we doing that, we're integrating into BIM as well. So we understand what the design said, the type of concrete and quality. We understand what the procurement said. And now finally, using our technology, we can understand what actually happened in the physical world. So this allows us to feed back into design to improve design. It allows us to automatically update design as built, because we know what concrete went into what hole when, and we can track waste compared to different designs as well. So we can start to design out waste, and we can make procurement a lot more efficient. On top of that, we can optimize operations as well using GPS. If that doesn't work, then we are developing a volume sensor for the back of the truck. So we understand the concrete quality, quantity, and type that is left over in the drum. And we are developing an app-based marketplace for surplus concrete on HS2. So we're able to deploy surplus to different sites to avoid it being wasted or going to landfill. And the next slide, please. And the next slide as well, please. And then finally, if we can't find a user for it on the marketplace, what we can actually do is we can have strategic precast facilities within projects where any surplus concrete is poured into, and we can track that, track the carbon impact and track the waste impact. And then these assets can be used on projects for many years to come as well. And next slide. I've been in construction about 15 years for myself, and I've spent a lot of time in senior management roles, so I'm very close to this problem. Next slide. And my CTO is a self-taught software and hardware engineer, and he's developed all of the software and hardware in-house ourselves. Next slide. We've had a very rapid journey. We've managed to secure a total of £3 million in funding. half of which is from Innovate UK government funding and half of which is from private investment, which really shows the strength of the sector and the belief in our solution. And next slide, please. And we're getting some great traction with customers as well. So we have Cemex, London Concrete, which is Lafarge Holcim, and Aggregate Industries, all working together with us, as well as just securing HS2 to roll out the pilot in the next 12 months. And next slide. And we'll go on to the next slide as well, because I think I'm running out of time. I'd like Nick to get in a little bit, and I will let Nick take over in French here, who's our head of product. Are you there, Nick?
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, so basically, sorry.
French. Tu veux French?
Oui, comme a dit Phil précédemment, on a des sensors sur le camion. Et on va essayer de mesurer la workability du béton. On a une équipe de data scientists qui regarde les data très précisément et qui essaye d'identifier des patterns en fonction de la température, en fonction du type de béton, etc., du temps passé dans le truck lui-même. Et tout ça, next slide, please. Et on essaye de ramener toutes ces informations, que ce soit sur les principaux facteurs qu'on essaye de remonter, que les savings sur les mètres cubes, sur le béton, j'arrive pas à le faire en français. Saving on the cubical meters, the waste reduction of CO2, the water saved, every KPIs that we managed to get out of the trunk